Hello and good morning, everyone. Welcome to two Alex's. We
Yeah,
love seeing you here today.
and we're
I think I'm a
just
little
gonna,
off here in the stream.
yeah, just gonna make your face a little bit bigger.
Yep.
I've had some last minute problems. I don't know where that came from.
It's no problem. Excellent. So I will go ahead and introduce my at least head here on the right hand side. My name is Alex, and my good partner Alex. How are you doing today, sir?
I am doing really well.
Awesome.
Yeah, my name is also Alex.
And then
And
give them a little background about yourself, maybe for the people that don't know.
yeah, so both of us are Microsoft employees, and I have been working for Microsoft Advertising for a while, and I do BI infrastructure, so lots of Power BI development, a little bit of Databricks, and I try real hard to be a PM and not a developer. Yeah,
Nice.
and before that, I was a chemist, and I did chemistry things.
Nice. So, Alex, you and me had kind of met just obviously through the interwebs and now just being able to kind of work internally as well. What was the idea behind the show? Why did you want to kind of get together and do something?
Yeah, so the idea and it was so in the Power BI community, we have a lot of folks doing blogs and a lot of folks doing walkthroughs on all of this content is focused on, hey, I want to solve a problem and I'm going to find this content for the problem I'm looking for. And then we also have a lot of folks doing news shows, and that content is really focused on just like what's hot, whatever's new. And once you're sort of getting past the introductory phase, like you're probably getting the news through the blog or through Twitter, and you don't really need lots of shows for that. And like most of the blogs and walkthroughs, like you see the standard stuff, and so it's only occasionally that you get new, interesting content. And so I thought like a really good complement to that would be a show where we discuss hard questions that don't have any obvious answers. And that's really focused at someone who's already watching Guy in a Cube, who's already reading the blogs, who already sort of knows how to use Power BI. Maybe they don't know everything, but like pretty familiar with the ecosystem and is just looking for more opinions and experiences on the things that they're constantly second guessing themselves on.
Cool.
Yeah.
Alex, I'll let you kind of look at your audio here real quick. Just getting a
Yeah.
few from the chat. But I would agree. So let's kind of get in that mindset right now. Maybe I've done a little bit of dashboard in a day, kind of getting into Power BI, maybe throwing out like a few reports to the organization. People are loving it. I'm just building, building, building. Everything is in the desktop. You almost hit like that wall where it's like, oh, I
Yeah.
actually need a lot more than just what the Power BI desktop offers. And it's not like a
Absolutely.
knock against the desktop either. It's just we want to do more, and it wasn't necessarily built for that just yet today. So we want to really kind of hit home on maybe open source versus closed source environments, and maybe some different tools that are available within the community. So this is kind of that going beyond the desktop today.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's going to set us up really nicely for some of the topics we have further down the road, which are going to be on like how do you do DevOps? How do you think about setting up your development pipeline? And you really can't make those decisions until you understand the trade-offs of all the pieces of the ecosystem.
Yep.
And so now that I've changed the sound, can the chat just let us know if this is better?
Wait for that thumbs up from you.
Yeah. Oh, your video just resized itself. That was weird. I didn't touch anything.
I wonder if that's what happened last time.
Yeah, I think.
Awesome. Thank you, Fernando and Betty. Excellent.
Okay.
Well, let's jump over to your desktop. Let's kind of jump
Yeah.
into maybe like about an open source environment. What tools do I need whenever I'm thinking about beyond the desktop?
Yeah, so let's come over here and oh, well, Alex's video has disappeared on us. But so when you think about Power BI, it's got lots of good UI tools. But the first place where I think a lot of folks get frustrated is they're trying to write measures, and there's not as much functionality, like especially as your models get bigger. Every time you try to commit something or test something, there's a big wait period. And the first external tool that you're going to end up working with is Dax Studio. And Dax Studio is definitely a super important tool. It can do a lot. So it can connect to your local models or to a model you've already published. I'm going to connect to a model I've already published. And the first, most interesting thing that it can do is it just lets you write measures.
So hold up, Alex. I've never used Dax Studio.
How
do I actually, I just download it and I connect to it, or is there any requirements to connect to a model?
So you just download it, and then the model either has to be running locally. So
I have to open up the Power BI file?
Yeah, you have to open the Power BI file, and then you can connect to it. Or you can connect to analysis services or a Power BI premium model that has XMLA endpoint turned on in the service.
Gotcha.
And that's what I'm doing here right now. And once you're there, now you can go ahead and, write some DAX. So you can just go ahead and you get your autocomplete and go ahead and write. And from there, this can be a much easier way to write. You get auto formatting, which can be really helpful. Let me jump into a much longer measure that I wrote the other day. This measure isn't nearly as complicated as it looks. Basically, I've got one measure, and I want to evaluate it based upon another measure that's on another fact table. And to do that, I need to cross-filter the dimension table. And then I have a bunch of stuff because I have an aggregation strategy that we're not going to get into. But to write a measure like this that's 100 lines long is super hard in Power BI because the scrolling experience isn't going to be super great. The other thing, interesting. They want me to zoom in.
Hold control.
Yeah. I think, is this better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
Okay. And the formatter comes in super handy for this because, if I want to I can even take individual clauses and say, hey, I just want to format this, or I want to format this. Oh, you need to have it be a valid statement, and it'll go ahead and format it in that context. And now that I've done this and I want to test the performance, Dax Studio actually lets me test things. So in this case, we've got a couple of tracing options, and they're all super useful. All queries you can get in desktop these days, and so we really want to talk about server timings. And so if I've actually wrapped this in a define, and then down here an evaluate statement that I pulled from desktop to test this measure. And so now if I hit F5 or run, for some reason this is showing blank, but the query is running.
It's taking a minute, yeah.
Yeah. It will give you really detailed performance information that you can get from there's a lot more information on this in, of course, the definitive guide to DAX. But this is the first tool that you're going to want to get into after desktop. There's other functionality in here. I lost my connection. That is interesting. So let's pop over to this window where we are connected. So this will take a minute, but view metrics here is a feature that you have to turn on in the advanced options. No, it's no longer a preview feature. You don't have to turn it on here. And what it does is it lets you actually see what exactly is going on in your model. So we can see each of the columns or each of the tables and how much space they take up, and what the percentage is.
That sounds like VertaPack Analyzer for my Power Pivot.
It is VertaPack Analyzer. And you get all the things that you need, but right here in Dax Studio, you don't have to go in Excel and do all of that stuff. Which, Alex, I think that's going to be a good transition to the next piece on VertaPack.
So at least with Dax Studio, this is open source. I can go out and freely download it, freely use it. I don't have to pay for a license. I'll ask our chat, are you currently using Dax Studio, or does your environment not allow open source software? Let me know in the chat if you can. Alex, if you'd like, go ahead and pop over to my screen.
Yeah.
I'll talk about like the closed source environment. So with closed source, I don't have this fun opportunity to go out and download free things. My environment says we're only allowing Microsoft approved software, or obviously vendors approved software. SQL Server Management Studio. It sounds like we may have an echo. Echo loop. Is that a software? I don't know what that is. Using Dax Studio. So currently within Power BI Desktop, I've just got a simple model open. I want to tell everyone it's a big secret. Maybe you didn't know. Maybe it's the worst kept secret. But every time you open up a Power BI Desktop file, it creates an analysis services database instance in the background. I'll pause there. So every time you open up Power BI, you're creating a database. That is insane. So we can use SQL Server Management Studio to connect to this. What you'll want to do, though, in a closed source environment, monitor report performance in Power BI. I'll include this kind of resource here. You're going to want to run this command. So within command prompt, if you go down to your start menu and just type in command prompt, you have to run it with elevated privileges. So if you do not have these within your environment, it could be an issue. So I'm going to right click this and do run as administrator. I'll probably lose my screen here for just a quick second. I'll be back. Press yes. Awesome. So I now have a command prompt. I want to get this localhost port ID. So where is this database being hosted here for the port? So I'm going to do netstat-b-n.
Oh.
I'll go and zoom in here for you too. I'll wait for this to run. Press enter.
So the reason that we need to do this is SSMS won't detect your local models, and so you need to give it the exact address of the local model, unlike in Dax Studio where it automatically showed us anything running locally. In SSMS, you're not going to get that, right?
Yep. So you have to run this, obviously the command prompt. Chewy just asked, is that why Power BI Desktop is so slow to open? Yes. Yeah. You're creating a database every time. That is why it's incredibly slow, but it's also incredibly powerful because you have that. So MSM DSRV, so Microsoft, I'm assuming multi-dimensional service is probably the original name, obviously with now coming with tabular modeling. So I'm going to copy this 60131 port ID that I now have.
Yeah.
Go and zoom out here.
And Dax Studio will show you this port number, but again, if you don't know, if you can't use Dax Studio, then this is the only way to get it.
Yep. So here within SQL Server Management Studio, once again, hopefully you can download it within your environment. If you can't get Dax Studio, the server type you'll want to use is analysis services. So a couple different options here. I'm going to do localhost : so this will be a requirement, and that 60131 port that I just identified my Power BI is being hosted in. So press connect.
And every time you launch Power BI, this port number will change. So
that is correct. You can set it to like a default, but obviously if you had two different Power BI desktops going at the same time, that could be an issue. So hopefully you just enjoyed the netstat-b-n. Look for that MSM DSRV. So I want to expand this now. Database, I can see the database. I can see my tables. So very similar to what kind of Alex was just doing. So I'm going to do a new query here now. Because he wrote a query, he was able to get information back. I would be curious if I can do the same over here. So let's do DAX.
Yeah.
So an analysis services DAX query.
So this is one of the big differences, is that in the DAX view, you're not getting the full object list. You'll notice that in the tables view in the Object Explorer, you can't expand your tables to see the columns in them. And
Yep.
and even in that MDX view, you have the column view, but here you don't.
Yeah. So right now I just wrote a simple DAX query. Go out and query that calendar table for me. I could do it with the colors table as well. Go ahead and run this. So I'm not limited per se. I can still run queries against my Power BI model if I'm in a closed environment. Just have to do a little bit more legwork kind of up front.
Yeah.
And then also this is just simple queries. If I wanted to, obviously I could extract these. So if my requirement was to build everything into my Power BI desktop model and then export it to Excel or export it to a text CSV file, this could be a good option. But also you could do like a count rows of the colors table. And then we would also just want to kind of return this back here just in a single row. So let's go ahead and do that. I don't have any formatting, sadly.
Yeah,
So this is where you may need to kind of get into DAXformatter.com.
Yeah, and so this tool is the same tool that was built in to Dax Studio.
Exactly. So once again, I'm a little frustrated. I'm in this closed source environment. I don't have that built-in VertaPack Analyzer per se. So there is an Excel file. So yes, hopefully Excel is approved within your environment. So you can go out here and download this now.
Yeah.
You'll have just a zip file. You want to look for this 1200 or above VertaPack Analyzer.
And you want to be using the 1.9 version, not the 2.0. The 2.0 version is designed to integrate with Dax Studio.
Awesome. Then can you take a look at the echo here? Just getting a couple of comments from Brian.
Yeah.
Again. Awesome. So let me go and open up this file. 1200. We'll see where we land. There we go. So we've got VertaPack Analyzer. How do I get my localhost port that I've now identified through my command prompt? So this 60131. How do I get that into this VertaPack Analyzer to look at my model, not whatever this thing is? So with this, you'll have to enable Power Pivot if you've not already done so. File, options, add-ins, and then you want to do just you can do com add-ins here whenever it pops up. There we go. You can do manage com add-ins. Press go. There's so much. Microsoft Power Pivot. It is now free, kind of within the application. I know that was maybe like a year or two ago. They just said put it in everything. So every version of kind of Excel now includes Power Pivot. So I'm going to go over here to the model, press manage. And then we're going to have to go into the connection string. Just not as fun, not as intuitive as Dax Studio, but I can still get the job done within my closed environment. So we'll give this just one moment here. Excellent. Thank you, Tenacious D and Brian Schiller. Kind of letting us know, giving us the thumbs up there.
Yeah, hopefully it stays away. It went away when I muted my mic, which means it's picking up from my headphones. All
right, so let's do kind of a Power Pivot now. I'm going to do existing connections. I've got this SSAS model, so we know now every time I open Power BI Desktop, it's creating this local instance. Press Edit on this, and then within this connection string, I'll go ahead and zoom in here. Localhost 51827. I want to get this updated to my 60131. Keep in mind, every time you create a new Power BI file, you're going to have to go out here and update this port number. Yes, I know it's kind of cumbersome, so you definitely want to kind of maybe set aside a little bit of time throughout your day just to make sure that you're doing this. Did I type in the wrong one? 60, or did it change? 60131. And then I'll probably need the catalog ID too. Oh, right here. So let me go over to that. Here's my ID. Let me do a copy. I should be able to just copy this. Not as much fun. There we go. Copy. Jump over to our VertaPack Analyzer. Zoom in. Delete. Oof. Test connection succeeded. So you'll need both the instance that was kind of within your data model and then the localhost port number. You can press save, and now you can refresh, and woof.
Yeah, so that's a lot of work. So I think the moral here, and this will come up again, is that if you're investing in Power BI, especially if you're working in Premium, you really need to get Dax Studio approved in your organization. Because without these VertaPack metrics, you're really not going to be able to effectively manage your capacity.
Yep.
No.
Cool. So I'm getting my data in here. I'm kind of at a little bit of parity with, kind of at least in the modeling side, maybe running DAX statements, looking at kind of the compression rates.
Yeah.
What can I do in terms of modeling? Kind of edit.
Yeah. So actually, before we come off of this, the other thing that I really like VertaPack Analyzer for is it is the start of being able to build a data dictionary. So in VertaPack Analyzer, not only do you get the model the model metrics, but you get the DAX definitions and you get the descriptions out of Power BI. And so if you're creating descriptions on your Power BI fields, you can bring those in to VertaPack. So let me switch over to my screen here, and I will show this really quick. So I'm here, and I'm just going to make a really quick demo table. So column, value 1, hit load, and if I come in here and and then if we go to the model view, if I set up this description and say this column describes how customers do X, Y, and Z here. Now, when my users are in my model, they will get, did I not save that description? Yeah, I did. So when my users are in the model, they should get that text when they mouse over. I'm surprised it's not doing that right now. Oh, I set it on the table. And these definitions come out in VertaPack Analyzer. And so you can take and delete all of the size information and use that as a start to do auto documentation. Yeah. So I think the next thing that we wanted to talk about as an overview here, and this is where we start to get into hard choices, is one of the big challenges in desktop is as your models start to get bigger and bigger, your making changes in Power BI takes longer and longer, because every time you commit a change, it's going to recompile the database, basically, or not recompile, but like validate everything. And so sometimes you want to do changes in bulk, and that is where Tabular Editor really starts to shine. So let me go ahead, and I'm going to open up, and you can open up again from a local instance, or from an XMLA endpoint, or from, if you're using other development tools, model.bim files, and here you can now make changes in bulk, and when you're done, deploy them to your premium model, not to Power BI Desktop. Yeah.
So Tabular Editor, this is like, is this a Microsoft product?
No, so this is another open source tool. So
you're telling me I have to go to IT twice now to get 2 different tools approved?
Well, maybe. Right now, I don't think that it's 100% a given that you want to use Tabular Editor. It brings a ton of functionality that you can't use and it can't get any other way, but it comes with some big drawbacks. But yeah, it is an open source tool. You can get it from GitHub. Daniel, who you've probably seen around in the community, is the author of this, and right now if you make changes in Tabular Editor, you can only deploy them to your premium models. That's it.
I think I saw this at MBAS though. I think they were like doing local writebacks to my Power BI,
Yeah.
just local file.
So Daniel worked with the product team to create as a Power BI contributor to make it so that you can do that. That feature is not out yet. It will be out very soon.
I think it's coming soon.
Yeah.
I think David said here in the chat, you can run Tabular Editor without admin using the zip and not MSI. So
Yeah.
if you have a friend that has a friend that got the zip through your closed source environment,
Yeah.
maybe run that.
Absolutely. And if you come into the preferences, you can set this up so that it can edit your Power BI. I haven't had super good luck with this. I've tried to use this, and it's not always worked as well as I would like. So our team is waiting to use this for most of our development until that new feature comes out. However, there are things we are using it for. For example, in our model, we have deployed calculation groups to Power BI, and the only way to do that is with Tabular Editor or SQL Server Data Tools, which is the next tool we'll talk about. And with SQL Server Data Tools, there's other big drawbacks. The main one here is just, okay, I can make changes here, but how do I sync this back up to my main model? And one of the things you can't do here is you can't really edit your Power Query sources effectively. If we come in and look at our partitions, I guess I could change this, but oh man, I don't know. If you want to use the power, I'm not like Alex Powers here. I can't really write M, and so I want to use the Power Query editor. And if I start fiddling around here, basically I've said, okay, I'm no longer using desktop at all. Yeah.
But I think what are some of the other drawbacks? Because it does not have autocomplete for Dax either, right?
That's right. If we come in here and start writing, it's got highlighting, but we're not getting any IntelliSense at all. We do have a Dax formatter option here. The other thing is it doesn't, if I write something like calculate table column here, this is and let's just remove this. This is a valid syntax, but it doesn't know that this object doesn't exist. And so until I try to deploy my model, it is not going to tell me that I made a mistake. And so see, it just has a little question mark here, and you need to deploy to validate. That can be difficult, especially if you're making a lot of changes. And so if you want to work in Tabular Editor, you're going to need an actual dev copy of your model, not just try to deploy to production. Because otherwise you're really not going to be able to test effectively.
Chris has some good commentary here too with Tabular.
So
good for solo devs, but nightmare when it comes to doing team collaboration.
Yeah, so I actually somewhat disagree with that, and we'll get into that more in the DevOps session. But one of the things that I really like about this is one of the formats you can save your model is as a folder. And I'm just going to bring it up because I've already saved this and I don't really want to make a new one, our source control. And in this format, every single object is a separate JSON file. So if you've got multiple devs working at the same time, now this can be checked into source control with a full diff merge, and you don't have any conflict at all. I mean, if you both edit the same measure, you do, but whereas before with Power BI, it's like, okay, I have to basically check out the model, and until I'm done, nobody can do anything. This is a real way to let devs work in parallel. But again, you're going to need to merge this back into the PBIX if you want to use Power Query. So, on the other hand, if you can't use this tool or you really want to use Power Query and this type of thing, you can use SSDT. And Alex, you want to talk a little bit about SSDT?
I will.
Okay.
We did have a couple questions here, at least in terms of documentation and if you go ahead and pull up my screen and we'll show. So he's talking about the tabular model, kind of oh, yep, there we go. So I'm still connected to SQL Server Management Studio. I'm writing DAX. I see my model. Tabular Editor. I'm going to go ahead and right click on this database that we've now created, do a new query. Actually, I'm sorry. Let me do a script as new query editor. And we'll give this just 1 second to get created. There we go. Welcome to Power BI. This is the underlying JSON model.
Yeah.
So here's my orders table, which I can see over here. Here's the different kind of columns. So the order ID is an int 64. All he's doing in Tabular Editor is he's editing this underlying JSON body.
Yeah.
And I don't want to like detract like how great Tabular Editor is, but that is why it's so great. Is you don't have to go through here and if you wanted to create a new column, you're not copying and pasting and trying to figure out where does one column start and another one end. So you definitely want to kind of avoid this if you can. If you're in a closed source environment and you're wanting to do some kind of version control, I mean, you could definitely kind of output this underlying JSON body and maybe store that somewhere. Something to think about, just kind of being aware. Another thing though that people were asking about was just general documentation. You did have it in Dax Studio, but you also have it within SQL Server Management Studio. So let me go ahead and just do a quick analysis services DMV. There we go.
Yeah.
So dynamic management views.
And a lot of what VertaPack Analyzer does is run DMVs for you. Exactly. It does other stuff. It actually runs DAX against the model, but a lot of it comes from these DMVs.
So maybe if we wanted to like look at columns from a table, or let's do data sources.
You need from again.
Yep. There we go. And let's run this. What am I having issues with?
Not admin on the model.
Oh, nice. I'll have to open it in another way. But basically, you can run these DMVs. It is available just through kind of Dax Studio. If you're using that today, you just go over to the DMV tab. Yeah. Just go ahead and instantly click on those, and it'll get up and running. Or you can kind of do it from here. Just the old-fashioned way, running a select star from. And there are some limitations, at least within being able to run it with like additional clauses, like your where statements. Some things aren't supported, so definitely something to kind of look into.
And the other thing is these DMVs, some of them you can run on other people's models that you don't have admin on. So the TM schema ones require admin, but if in the DMV list, the discover commands and some of the MD schema commands will work without admin. And so if you're connecting to analysis service model you've never used before, and you want to learn how the DAX works or the relationships, this can be a way to get that without having to put in a ticket for someone to help you.
Yeah, I'll have to run it at elevator rights. Yeah. So Chewy has a great question here. What's your take on not having yet a robust option for version control in Power BI desktop files? It kills me.
Yeah. Kills me. So it's a little painful. It works, but honestly, we've been fine for the most part without it. So I manage a team, or not manage, but I work with a team of developers, and we're developing a big premium model. I don't know if you saw, but it's like 18 gigabytes of memory right now, and we're doing it in Power BI, and we're using Azure DevOps to check in the PBIX, and it works. We've got Power Query parameters to keep the file size down, so all the tables are limited to 10 rows. And then everybody knows they have to check in before they go home at the end of the day. And since we're in different time zones, it works really well. But source control would be a huge benefit. And when we get this external tools integration, if you wanted to say only use Tabular Editor, you could get really close. And then I know the product team is super keen on getting this into source control. The reason it's not now is a lot of the stuff in Power BI Desktop is like there's annotations in the model and binary compressed things, and like if you break it at all, the file just won't load at all, and it won't tell you why. It just won't work. And so they're working on changing the underlying data structure so that there's fewer things for you to break.
There we go. Use system in front of your DMVs.
There you go.
Now we're up and running. So TM schema columns, I can pull back all the columns. See, that's where I just enjoy using it in Dax Studio a lot more.
Yeah.
So you can get your source columns, original column IDs. You can start outputting all this, whether it be flat files or it could be writing it to a database table and having it long term.
Yeah.
If you think about like ideation, if you're on Power BI Premium, you could do a loop through of all of your premium data sets, run these DMVs, and then store that. So you could have a complete inventory of your entire environment of at least Power BI Premium content.
Yeah.
So something to think about.
Yeah.
So let's kind of get into SQL Server data tools. Hopefully that answers questions at least about maybe looking at DMVs. That is a topic we are going to kind of go down in the future. Just more documentation. How can you kind of approach that? So SQL Server data tools, kind of jump over here, standalone or within Visual Studio. Just go out here and get it downloaded. Hopefully, if you've got a Visual Studio license within your environment, you can start a new project.
Yeah.
So create a new project.
But Alex, we were talking about this the other day. I think everything that you're going to want to do will work in the community edition of Visual Studio, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So
you don't need an enterprise license if your company doesn't have one. As long as you just have like a community edition, you should be more than fine.
Yeah.
So either creating a new analysis services tab project, if you have an existing Power Pivot model, maybe from an Excel workbook days, it will go ahead and import those and create a new instance. Mm-hmm. There used to be like a Power BI version, but I think there was a little bit of security issues, so they kind of killed that. So let's go ahead and I'm just connect to an existing. So I'm going to jump back here. Wide world importers.
Oh, standby.
And then we'll go ahead and get authenticated here in just 1 second.
Yeah.
So if you've never done kind of tabular modeling, kind of here the old-fashioned way, it is very bare bones. It's obviously not the fun edition of kind of Power BI, but I really enjoy it, actually.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty great.
And you do get things that you couldn't get any other way. So you get both Power Query and source control. But there's a lot of modeling features that are only in Power BI that you can't get here. So like you can't create, at least I don't think you can create composite models here. And the aggregation system, every aggregation has to be written in DAX. So when you use SSDT, you're giving up those features, and there's no clear path to upgrading your model to get those features later.
Take a look here, kind of at least within SQL Server data tools, your data sources, your tables. So very similar to kind of what we've seen in the other programs. Modeling view kind of versus just table view. So if you were in the Power Pivot kind of Excel days, your skills are just as relevant now as they were then. So you can easily get up and running. It kind of goes back to Power BI too. If you're doing Power BI kind of data modeling or call yourself a developer, your skill set crosses SQL Server Analysis Services, Power BI, and obviously Azure Analysis Services.
Yeah.
So you're one talent, you can do it all.
You should be able to work in SSDT without learning any more code than you already know from Power BI. Like you don't need to learn C#. You don't need to learn these JSON files. You can use Power Query and the same sort of DAX experience you're used to in Power BI Desktop.
And I'll actually go over here and show. You can take on that question from Donald.
Yeah. So there is. If I just switch back to my screen really quick, while you get that up to answer Donald's question, there is this filter box, if I can find my mouse here. So, and this will give you exactly what you need right in Tabular Editor. So, back over to you.
Nice. Thank you, Alex. I'm a huge Power Query fan. I think everyone kind of knows that about me now.
Mm-hmm.
Data sources here on the right-hand side. I'm going to do kind of change source here now. Now I'm going to tell you, I'm actually in love with their implementation of Power Query. Hold on, let me do this here again. I might have to edit. I'll edit this one table. Table properties. Let's do design.
It's a lot of clicks to get into Power Query.
Yeah, since I've already had them imported. So calendar partition Power Query editor. If you're doing Power Query in Excel and Power BI, anywhere, you now know it up here in analysis services.
Yeah.
So I just want to kind of give you that kind of reassurance there with your skill set.
Yeah. But one advantage here is that Power SSDT gives you much more control over individual partitions. Like if you wanted to have old partitions from one data source and new partitions from some faster data source, you can do that in SSDT. Doing that in Power BI is basically impossible. I mean, you could probably do it by like a union, and then, but like you'd have incremental refresh that was sort of not really incremental refresh. Like, yeah.
So Power Query Editor, this is such a lightweight addition to the Power Query family.
Yeah.
Look at how clean this is. It's beautiful. I love it.
Looks like we're back in Office 2007.
I know. So we do still have advanced editor, so we can write code. Some things, obviously, like line numbers aren't up here, so just not that full feature parity that we would like to see. But applied steps, clicking on columns, I mean, you can still do it all. Filtering, right click, you still have all of your transformations kind of up here. Once again, I just like the lightweight kind of feel of it. It's very crisp and clean for me, especially as someone who enjoys both kind of graphical user interface and put my hands on the keyboard.
Yeah, Alex, we have a question in the chat about whether or not SSDT will run in 64-bit mode, and I think it does, right?
Yeah, it should. Yeah.
So
hopefully, if you've not tried it, definitely go out to the documentation, but I don't see any reason why I wouldn't.
Yeah, and that's actually a really good point, is that 64-bit mode is super important because you're going to want a lot of memory, and so like you can run Power BI in 32-bit mode if you have a 32-bit driver that you have to use, but your memory is like, you're just not going to be able to build a very big model at all.
Yeah.
Like,
and then talking about partitions, so once again, just something not available in kind of Power BI desktop. You can do it in Tabular Editor, but you just got to kind of copy that and paste that code over here. So partitions, I'm going to right click, just kind of looking at my existing partitions now. So I've got 2013 orders. I'll go ahead and zoom in here now. Each date.year equals 2013. If I look at my 2014 partition, 2014, 2015 partitions, 2015. So I'm just creating smaller kind of segments here of the data that I'm querying, just and then load into your data model. So in this way, I don't have to process everything all at once like we do in Power BI Desktop today. I can just say everything in 2013 is unchanged. Just process that once, and then kind of go forward with the new orders.
Yeah,
but that's why these tools are so more robust and kind of important whenever you get into that level.
Yeah. And you can also, you can't edit individual partitions, but in SSMF, you can process individual partitions, even on your Power BI premium models, which is something we do quite a bit. In order to have a 20 gig model, you sort of have to be careful about what you process at one time.
So talking about that, let's do analysis services. I'll kind of jump over here. And yes, I should be able to get up here. Got to jump into this, of course. MFA. So we talked about partitions and kind of being able to actually process these. So back to SQL Server Management Studio. So kind of both a blended open and closed source environment kind of needs now. And it's working. Let's see if I'm stuck on an endless loop. All right. Well, I'll throw it back to you, Alex.
Yeah.
What can we do, at least in terms of kind of the source control, the documentation? Is there a tool on the open source side that's going to make my life easier?
Yeah, I mean, we already talked a little bit about on documentation how we can use VertaPack Analyzer, but when it comes to managing your life cycles, one of the most important questions is how do you deploy things in Power BI Desktop. The idea is you just hit publish, and when you do, the model that's in production gets completely replaced. Data gets totally wiped out, so what you published better be up to date. That's fine if your model is less than a gig and only takes 20 minutes to refresh. But what if your model takes 2 hours to refresh, which can happen even on a 1 gig model? And what if your model is huge? Then you can't even upload your PBIX fully refreshed. But you don't want to give users downtime. And so our next set of tools is where we get into that. And the best tool to use here is a tool called ALM Toolkit. And this is a tool written by Christian Wade, who is on the Power BI PM team, but it's an open source tool. It fails Smart Screen when you try to install it, so this is very much you need to be in an inclusive environment in order to install it. But what it lets you do is actually compare differences between models. So once again, we can connect to premium models, we can connect to local data sets, and we can connect to local data sets that we have running. We can connect to model.bim files and PBIT files. So not running, not PBIX files, but if you take and you save as to a PBIT, you can do a comparison without the model running. So that's what we're going to do here. I've got a PBIT selected, and then I've got my premium model selected, and it's going to do a comparison between them, and it's going to show me on a object by object basis what all the differences are. And so in this case, this has been recently deployed, and so most things are the same. If we come up here, we can do hide objects with the same definition, and now we can
Alex, I'm going to pause you for 1 second here, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Tenacious Data had a great question. All of these tools are coming to Power BI Desktop this summer, correct? Not aware of the timeline,
yeah.
but are all of these going to be available to me regardless of my environment in Power BI Desktop?
So you'll still,
or do I need to add these locally installed?
You'll still have the way it's been explained by the product team is you'll still have to install these, but they'll be in Power BI somewhere. Probably, I think it's a new ribbon, but there'll be buttons to automatically launch these tools that are already connected to your model. So
kind of so me as a closed source, if I don't have these tools available and I click that button, nothing's going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully that will make it easier for you to get them installed. Tabular Editor just got certificates in place so that it would not fail Smart Screen, but ALM Toolkit still, when you try to install it, is going to give you errors. And that actually brings me back to installing ALM Toolkit, which we're trying to make sure to cover here, which is it's just almtoolkit.com. You go to download the latest version. It's going to take you to GitHub and download this. You do need to have a fairly recent version. I think version 5 or newer and you see we downloaded it and already Windows is saying, hey, this is not a file, or like this is a virus, and you have to go through lots of buttons. So once we've told it to keep, now again when I try and run it, oh my god, what am I doing to my computer? But if you just click through, it'll work, and it actually is not going to break your computer. It might break your model, but that would be your fault. So that's the deal with ALM Toolkit, and you can see here I've got in production, I've got calculation groups, but I don't have those in my PBX because Power BI's, even if you try and deploy them, it's just going to break. So I actually think, Lemon, to sort of go on your question, ribbon integration is sort of the least of it. It's the fact that when this feature launches, you'll be able to open to your local thing, hit save, and you're not going to break anything. And so you can have your local model open, make changes in other tools, deploy them to your local model, and have a good working PBIX when you're done. And that's going to make a really big deal, because now you can use these tools that do support source control and incremental deployment, and not give up the ability to use Power BI Desktop at all. So, yeah. And so from here, once we get something that we like, we can do validate, and it'll say, hey, we're going to make all these changes, and tell you if there's any errors. And then, so you can say, hey, actually, I don't want to delete this. And now when I go to deploy, it's not going to make any changes to that object. And so there's two things. One, if I have stuff that's not ready for prime time, I can just skip it until it's ready. And two, if when you do this type of deployment, you're not publishing any data. You're not overwriting the data that you have. You're just changing the definitions. And then when it's done, it'll reprocess just the tables that need to be reprocessed, not the whole thing. So you can check this only process affected tables, and it'll only update the tables that you changed, and it'll update them with the full information, not the old information that you pulled into Power BI Desktop 2 weeks ago when you started working on this. So, yeah. There's no... Sorry, go ahead.
I've got nothing on the closed source side that even comes close to
this.
So
there's a Visual Studio plugin that's basically this thing. It's called Business Normalizer. It has all the same functionality, but I don't think it's been updated to support Power BI. I think you have to run the standalone. So, yeah, you're pretty stuck. I mean, if you're working in SSDT, you can do partial deployments using SSDT, but again, now you're not working in Power BI at all. So, yeah. So,
honorable mentions?
Yeah, honorable mentions. So,
yeah. There's just a lot to think about.
Yeah.
Like, I'm done with Power BI Desktop. I've deployed a few reports. It's starting to gain traction within my environment.
Yeah.
I'm seeing everyone else around the internet using all these great tools. I either hopefully can go out and download them and then maybe start using them. Yeah. If not, if I'm kind of in that closed source environment, I have to carry that for my organization.
Right. Which
I have to be that voice. I have to be that champion.
Which means you're going to need to have a plan in terms of exactly what your development process is. Right? You can't just sort of use all these tools. You need to think about, okay, if I use this tool, that means I'm not using this other tool. Or we're going to use this tool specifically for this thing. Especially if you're working with other people, it's really important that they know that, like, oh, hey, I use Tabular Editor to add calculation groups to our production model. That means they can never, ever, ever hit publish in desktop. They need to know that. So, yeah.
It'll be interesting, especially as these new tools start becoming available on the ribbon. If they are available within your environment, read through the limitations sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
I think we're starting to see that with maybe some of the enhanced metadata file format, especially with some of the people that were building kind of previous solutions on the Power Query side. Like, they're just not working anymore as they used to. So I'll be very curious.
Yeah.
To see what breaks and what kind of is good to move forward. We've got a couple comments here. All this that I have shared today is not easy to envision a regular report author with no IT background can engage on using Power BI.
Yeah.
It's just really something. I love it, though.
So, yeah, I mean, these are the tools you can use to go to the next level. So, like, if you just want to click the buttons in desktop, like, great, you're going to produce a model. But if you make a model and it's like, hey, it takes 2 hours to refresh and it's a gigabyte and I only have 200,000 rows in, like, these are the tools you need, or like you start to get into these tools to be able to answer these questions. And then you're like, okay, I've got 100 users. I need to guarantee no downtime. Okay, well now desktop maybe isn't going to be enough for you. And so you're right. These are not things you use for projects where you just like do it once and get it out there. These are things you're going to use if you want to say, hey, this is an official product that has documentation and guarantees like multiple people. Like that's when you start to get into these are the tools that you need. And if you're using Power BI Premium, that becomes super important. You both have a CPU budget and a RAM budget. And I think, Alex, you were telling me the other day that most customers tend to run into CPU problems before they run into RAM problems. But both you can really blow out of the water really quick. And especially Dax Studio really lets you manage those problems. But once you start to make bigger models that you can do in Premium, like to manage that, you need these other tools.
Yeah. Scalability, especially the more your skills kind of grow, you're just going to find maybe kind of limitations within the desktop. Not in like that it can't do everything that you would hopefully need to do, especially like looking at aggregations or composites, but you're going to need to look at some of these external tools. So think beyond the desktop now.
Yeah, the other thing that when I really got into using Dax Studio for was in my organization, we just love analysis services. And there's lots of data sets where the only way to get it is from analysis services. And so if you're trying to build really anything, you're going to need to write summarized column queries to get the data you need. And like, you don't want to just do that in the native query box in Power Query and Power BI. That's going to be a real nightmare. So
I'm loving this comment here from Tenacious Data. The Alex X2 show is catering to the deep users, I would think. And Chewy says, it seems.
Yeah. As we talked about at the beginning, the concept for this show is we wanted to create content that we thought we were missing, which is like, okay, I've already been watching Guy in a Cube, and like, man, like the videos this week were like, how do I use data flows? If you've already, like, they've already done videos on that stuff. Like, if you're already following the news and you've already sort of covered like some of the basic material, what's next? And like, sure, you can read every blog post on SQL BI and Chris Webb's blog, but like, okay, that's like an hour a week. And like, here's another hour a week of content targeted to folks that think they are already consuming everything that's out there. Yeah.
Especially for me, it's just pointing out the dark corners that maybe don't get enough light and saying, hey, especially like future topics, we want to look at application kind of lifecycle management. Low to no code version, what's available in the service, and also kind of looking at an actual like ops experience. So we definitely want to hit home on everyone where it's no matter if someone finds our videos maybe 2 years from now and they're just now starting to like hit that point of being like, all right, I need to do more. Hopefully this content will definitely be relevant for them too.
Absolutely. And also we want to get into some of the questions that have no right answer. Like how should you how should you think about self-serve versus central, and as an organization, how open do you want to be, and those types of topics. We wanted to start here with the tools because in future episodes, we're probably just going to be talking about these tools and assuming that you're somewhat familiar with what they can do. Because we just barely scratched the surface on each of these tools in an hour, and I don't know, an hour exactly now. So to get into some of these deeper conversations, these are sort of prerequisite knowledge.
Just like today. Open source versus closed source opinions. Alex will have some weeks where I agree with him and some weeks where he'll disagree with me. So we definitely want to have kind of that natural tension here. But Alex, let's go ahead and wrap up then here, seeing as we're hitting the top of the hour. I appreciate everyone for hanging out with us today. We'll continue these. We'll post kind of the next topic here for everyone too. But if you have any ideas that you also would like to see, just let us know.
Yeah.
Reach out to us on Twitter, reach out to us on LinkedIn.
Absolutely.
Just wherever you kind of hang out with your networks.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. And I think we're just going to go ahead and wrap it up.